Hello guys! Welcome to our official Dev Grim Dawn stream. I am Zentai on the forums for those that don't know me, though I think there's a lot of familiar faces in the chat already. Yes, that music, right from Bog. And I believe the sound guys are actually working on some new tracks for Forgotten Gods. And I've actually heard a few of them a few weeks ago, it's like a work in progress, and it's going really well. A wild Zentai has appeared. Are there unofficial dev streams? We have had an unofficial one in the past. I mean, I have a channel that I literally haven't streamed on in probably 2 years. Please change the game engine. No. Hello! Alright, so I think you guys know why you're here. You want to ask me questions so I can spoil things for you. And you want to see some of what's coming up for upcoming patch V1.0.6.0. Which, for those that don't know, will include some new item sets, a new boss out in Bog, some pretty major changes to the Crucible balance, and of course the usual sleuth of balance changes. Let's talk DA. Alright, what about DA? Defensive ability. What DA? Defense Attorney? Spoil the Sentinel set for you. Oh, you mean like the actual armor that the Sentinel wears? Given the theme of the next expansion, I might actually see to making that a possibility. And having his full colored version actually be something you could gather. What are we nerfing? New Swamp Boss, yes. Sentinel cosplay confirmed, yep. When is the new expansion release? We're hard at work on the expansion. Pretty much everyone on the GD team is now essentially focused on the expansion. The patch 1.0.6.0 will pretty much be the last sort of content drop, beyond any sort of tuning changes we might still do between now and then. And so we're expecting to ship it in the second half of 2018, and things are looking good for that, as of now. We need some lore, some spoilers, and names of new constellations. Alright, names of new constellations. Let's see what I can give you here. You guys want to jump straight to all the big spoilers, huh? Your Friday is not complete without a stream. Well, I'm sorry we don't stream every Friday, then. Thank you for focusing on the right things on Grim Dawn. You appreciate it? Well, I'm glad you appreciate it, because we appreciate it, that you appreciate it. Any buffs to Poison / Warlock? What kind of buffs are you looking for, and what kind of buffs do you think they need? I suppose that's a discussion to be had on the forum. Alright, new constellations. Now the art for these doesn't exist yet, so I can't really tease you with any of that. Maybe I'll give you some... There we go. Today, you'll know the names of the Tier 1 constellations. Let's not spoil the big ones quite yet. So those are, there's 4 of them. I hold up 3 fingers. 4 of them. We got the Sandclaw, and you guys actually saw the Sandclaw over in one of our previous development updates. We have a Mantis, Beetle, and the Lotus. And those will be spread among the various directions in the devotion screen. Will there be a Grim Dawn 2 in the future? That is really far too soon to tell. I mean, I think someday we'll have it in us to do a Grim Dawn 2, and we'll see what the stars say at that time. It's not going to happen anytime soon, generally because the team that's been involved with Grim Dawn has been at it for a very long time, and they might want to try something else for a while. Could I ask the devs if the item reroller will be included smithing bonuses? Wait, ask the devs? I mean, like, hello? The item reroller will not include smithing bonuses. You're effectively creating a new item. How many new item sets are in patch 1.0.6.0? There's 3. There's 3 new sets, and we're actually going to go over all 3 of them today. I actually have one of them on screen already. That's the Blood Knight. Actually, do I have it on screen? I guess I don't. Let me make sure. There. Now I'll have it on screen. Will you be getting more devotion points? We are not increasing the devotion point cap with the expansion. I think 55 is actually a pretty good place where your choices are meaningful, but you have some flexibility, and I don't really want to disrupt that. Was Forgotten God inspired by Time Quest by chance? No, I would say it has not been inspired by Time Quest at all. Generally, that story where it's going, it's something that we've been toying around with for a pretty long time, and we just weren't sure if we're gonna be able to get to it with Grim Dawn, or if we'd have to touch upon it maybe with a Grim Dawn 2 or something later. But no, like the desert theme, I mean, yeah, TQ had a desert, so does Diablo and Torchlight and all these other ARPGs, so I'm not really sure desert and TQ are some kind of rule. Sandclaw, Mantis Beetle, and Lotus. Will the Mantis be praying? I sure hope so. Will there be more DLCs in the future? That is too soon to tell. Just like when we were working on the first expansion, we weren't really ready to commit that there would be a second, and that was entirely based upon sales. So if expansion 2 does so well that we can't possibly not do a third expansion, we'll have to think about that. But in terms of like the major story points that we want to tell, Forgotten Gods is kind of the culmination of some really big things we've been teasing along the way. And I wouldn't say necessarily the story of Grim Dawn ends with Forgotten Gods, but it certainly does come to a major climax. Can we get bigger pets? Skeletons and Barathorns are rather small in comparison to the Void Taskmasters. I'd like some kind of Balrog. The problem with that is that the bigger they get, the more they start clipping into things, and the more they start colliding with things. They might end up getting stuck. And so generally we try to keep pets to a certain size. Please don't put too much sand. We're just gonna have to be a little sand. Another Grim Dawn is coming out for console, and we're getting controller support, or we have controller support. Any chance we'll get local multiplayer? I'm not sure that's super likely at this point. It would take quite a lot of changes to the interface to make that happen. Once we have the working console version and release, maybe it's something we can look into, but I can't really promise that at this time. Can you pick a loading screen to use? No, you will not be able to pick a loading screen. However, with the Forgotten Gods expansion, the loading screen will actually cycle through the 3 loading screens that the game has, or will have at that point. Besides the new content, what's the main selling point of this expansion? Well, like you mentioned, the content is a huge thing. There's a whole bunch of quality of life features and some stuff we're not ready to talk about yet. And there's a new game mode. I would put that on the same kind of level of involvement as the Crucible, but it actually starts from within the main world. So you wouldn't go to the main menu, load up the Crucible, and host that. You would actually load up the main campaign. You'd go to a place in the world, and that's where the new game mode is. All I can tell you about the new game mode is that it's very shattering. Is it safe to assume a God Killer achievement for the new X-Pack? Man, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see where the Forgotten Gods take you. Will Grim Dawn count on Nintendo Switch? I'm not sure that's very likely. We'd have to see whether it even involves and whether the performance would be good enough. The Nintendo Switch isn't exactly as powerful as the other 2 consoles, which is a concern when it comes to Grim Dawn's CPU usage and GPU usage. And it's really just the fact that there's all these entities on screen is the big deal. Can we have an option to turn off offensive player spell effects? In multiplayer, so much gets going on, you can't tell what's good and bad. I agree with you, and I have some ideas for how we could fix it. I'm just not sure how feasible it will be. Basically, the idea is to tone down the spell effects that other players create in multiplayer. So you primarily see your spell effects, and everyone else's are kind of toned down. Again, though, I'm not sure how feasible that is in the engine. We'll have to figure that out and see if it fits. Are there plans to make the devotion system more intuitive and integrated with character development somehow? I guess I'm not sure what you mean by that. I mean, it is very integral to character development. In terms of making it more intuitive, I suppose a search feature would be a huge plus. We're looking into how much that will take. That's not the current priority, but I'd like to make it a priority. We'll see. For now, at least, you have Grim Tools, which is an excellent website if you ever want to look up the devotion screen and search on there. What synergies do you see in Occultist and Arcanist? I mean, a whole variety of synergies, but I think that's a question better served for the forum, because then we could get into a whole debate on that. Hope I've had my resistances up to prevent the Pax Pox. Unfortunately, I actually did not. I picked up a copy of the Pax Pox while I was out there, but thankfully did not have many hours of content, and I'm pretty much over it. Will we learn about the Ashes of Malmeth loading screen girl in Forgotten Gods? You will. You actually will. We were teasing that a while ago, but we were serious. We're not just screwing with you. How much will the new expansion cost? That's still not set. We're still kind of finalizing how much content it will have, just like Ashes of Malmeth, we were finalizing content before we decided on how much it will be. I imagine it'll be in the $10 to $20 range. It is a smaller expansion in terms of story content, but it does include that game mode, which will be pretty big, I think, for a lot of people. Any chance of having animation canceling? I mean, that is in the game to a degree with auto attacks. I'm not sure I would make it any more involved than that. Will the second expansion introduce a fourth difficulty beyond Ultimate? No, we are not adding another difficulty. Just like we're not adding another tier of items. Please, please, please fix the map square bug. You'll pay us for a map bug fix DLC. Does it really bother you that much? I mean, I get it, it's a really old bug, but given how harmless it is, it's kind of difficult to justify the amount of effort it actually take to track it down, because it's kind of an esoteric issue that is hard to reproduce, which, whenever an issue is hard to reproduce, makes it difficult for programmers to track down. Will you see more of Kaiman Death's visual story? Yes, you will. They do play a part in this next chapter of Grim Dawn. Here's how many total people are working on Grim Dawn, like in the company. Let's see. We have 3 designers that are involved with Grim Dawn full-time. Madeira is involved part-time, though a lot of his focus right now is on our next project that he'll be announcing sometime later this year, I imagine. Let's see, we have 2 artists that are doing it full-time and another artist that chips in sometimes. We have a couple programmers and animation work, the sound guys. I mean, within the company itself, I think we're talking like 7 people. Within people that we contract with, like the sound guys, then that adds a lot more. Well, not a lot more, but a few more. Yeah, there's 13 people in the company, but they're not all involved with Grim Dawn. $200 melee survival you looked at. Savagery Warders feel surprisingly flimsy. I think you'll find something in the next patch that will help you with that, especially for Warders in particular. You need a new game mode spoiler. I'm sure you do. It'll be absolutely shattering. Can I adjust enemy resistances in Ultimate for people who like to focus on only one damage type? My recommendation to you is don't focus on one damage type, or increase your resistance reduction. Also, game-breaking illusions are not displayed in the multiplayer window. We'll have to see if we can do something about that. What's the focus of this set? Yeah, I guess I can actually hop in the game and start showing you these sets. It's like all blah blah blah, answering questions, not actually getting to the point of what this stream was supposed to be about. So, this set is called the Blood Knight, as I mentioned, and I'll just get over to my little target dummy area here. and we'll go into what it actually does. So I guess let's go through it's a 4-piece item set. Torso, shoulders, helmet, and necklace. Pretty standard stuff. So we'll go through the 4 item tooltips here, and you guys can take a quick gander, and then we'll actually see it in practice. Where can we obtain a mythical Warhammer of Heavenly Judgment? Man, it's like, you're gonna ask me that every day, aren't you? You saw the swag in the physical boxes. Will we ever have a shop? I honestly can't tell you. The biggest hurdle is honestly just having someone to manage it, while also, doing something besides just managing a store. Will the Crucible go on sale next patch? It wasn't on sale with the expansion last time. The Crucible's been on sale several times already this year, I think, and it's bound to go on sale again, definitely for the summer sale on Steam. Will SkewSound do more streams? That's up to them. I think they enjoyed the streams they did before, and they'll might do so again for the new soundtrack. A more controller-friendly inventory screen. Not sure how feasible that will be at this point, but something we can look into the future potentially. Tome and board is not happening. Is there any plans to help with storing components without losing half your backspace? Well, that's why we gave you a lot of bags. How far away is the new continent? Well, it's not a new continent exactly, but you are traveling quite a bit away from where the current content takes place. So hover over to the helm. Another super game breaking bug. All the fist weapons are clearly held the wrong way around with the thumb at the bottom. That actually depends on which hand you put the weapon in. Due to the way the weapon's attached to your hand, it ends up rotating when it's in the left hand, and that's why it looks that way. It has been a long time since you've seen this test world, because it has been a very long time since I've streamed. But now that we're ramping up on Forgotten Gods, I suppose you might see more of me, for better or worse. Will this set take wind shear into account? Yes, the average wind speed an African swallow was carefully calibrated when putting those little flags on those shoulders. Are we going to add more Nemesis mobs? There will be a new Nemesis in the next expansion. I will tell you that he's Eldritch themed, whatever that means to you. Will we be rebalancing the Witch Doctor or Scion Ascendant? I don't know. I guess if I get to work on Path of Exile, I'll get to that. Any chance of getting a sell white, yellow, green option at the merchants? Not super likely. Not sure if you should be really keeping your yellows past a certain point anyway. Will Forgotten Gods include a new rogue dungeon? Probably not, because not only is it going to do some improvements to existing roguelike dungeons, it's also going to introduce the new game mode, which kind of fills a similar play loop. Why are you so stoked for this expansion you know so little about? I don't know, you love what we do and you trust us, I guess? Oops. When will this be released? Depends on what we're talking about this. If you're talking about the patch, that's actually going to go into testing very soon. And the expansion itself is coming later this year in the second half of 2018. Did Grava stop streaming leave? No, Grava's around. He'll stream in the future again. You're not gonna get me all the time. Yes, it is actually a nod to the King in Yellow from the Cthulhu mythos. You got that exactly right. Can we also get a Beast Nemesis for the main game region? Probably not. Rifts confirmed, very interesting, blah blah blah. Have I gained some weight? Excuse me? No, I have not. Will there be anything resembling pyramids in Forgotten Gods? Maybe. Maybe at least one big one. Oh, there is a tag not found issue there. Nice. Bug found. I think it's supposed to be bonus necromancer. We'll fix that later. Ah, the epic invalid skill profile mastery, the best class in the game. Will the 3 difficulty problem be addressed in Forgotten Gods or anytime soon? We shall see. We have some ideas. We'll see how they turn out and if we'll go through with them. When will the new game mode be revealed? Sometime in the near future. Maybe in the next couple months. Maybe even the next month. We'll see. There's some art that needs to happen first before we can actually show it to you. And then maybe we'll talk about it. I'm pretty excited to talk to you guys about it. What was this really stupid secret area Grava said you guys hadn't scrapped? Are you talking about the level he was working on kind of on the side when he was doing the development streams? I mean, that wasn't really a secret level. That was just like a little side project. Where can you buy Grim Dawn merch? Unfortunately, that's not available at this time. If that changes, we'll be sure to let you guys know. Tech not found. New mastery confirmed. Any plans on retuning attribute points so they have more effects so we just don't dump points in physique? Nope. I think that is something that we could have definitely done better when the game was still in early access. But given the point it's at, I don't think we'll be doing any major rehashes to attributes at this point. That said, attribute points aren't a huge impact on your character's survival or performance, so I'm not sure it's really even as big of a deal as some people make it out to be. Can you see that skill from the set? Yes, you can. So first off, the skill has a few procs. On the necklace, you have Call Upon the Bloodbathed. So, if you are a necromancer, preferably a death knight of some kind, and you want to do damage yourself, but you also like having pets around, this might just be the set for you. There's the little guy helping out. See if we can get another one out here. There he is. How does he scale off of player bonuses? The same way a totem might, or what other pets are there? The Wind Devils, the Inquisitor's Traps. So now the granted skill from the set itself. And the thing with this guy, and as you can see from the set bonus abilities, is that all the damage he does, a portion of that actually gets transferred to you. So this pet will actually heal you with all the damage he deals to nearby enemies. And this wraith scales with player bonuses as well. Will there be item sets that give more options for damage conversion for pets? That is something we'll look into with Forgotten Gods items, for sure. We'll see what we can do there. I'm not sure I want to give pets the same breadth of conversion options as players, but there's certainly room for more. Any plans to make the Mythical Will of Bismiel better than the regular version? Perhaps also make the pets spawn and attack like this DK pet amulet. What? What's not better about it? Alright, so the next set we got in line is called Radagon's Folly. Get that equipped. Hopefully no invalid skill profiles here. $215 people in here, nice! You guys like me or something. Odds of ever seeing acid to fire converters for Defiler Pyromancer support. That seems like a great idea for some Forgotten Gods gear. These are the 1.0.6.0 sets, so they are coming as a free content update in the coming months, and they're actually going to testing very soon. The regular Will of Bismuil gives you 3 pets, the mythical one doesn't, and therefore it's useless. Okay. Are you thinking about increasing the amount of Hellhounds or Briarthorns you get to invest when you invest points in the skills? Let's say you have 16 points in the Hellhound, you get 2 Hellhounds. No, but we have actually made some improvements to those abilities and the abilities the pets gain. Specifically, for the Hellhound, for example, the death explosion that the Hellhound makes will do more damage, and it will scale with the skill's rank instead of just the pet's the skill level. So it actually require investment instead of just being always great. Secondly, all of the pet secondary abilities, any sort of like swipes they have, or breaths, or the Thorn Nova for the Briar Thorn, all of those will now deal a portion of their attack damage in addition to the skill's damage. And that portion of attack damage will scale with the skill's rank. So for example, with let's see, Ember Claw for the Hellhound. If you rank that up, up to 40% of its attack damage will be added to Ember Claw. What are the salaries of crate employees? That's a very personal question. It's they're reasonable. How about that? We keep working here for some reason. It's not just because of Arthur's pretty face. Is that feature for completing sets by converting an existing set item into another item coming with the free content update, or is that a Forgotten Gods feature? That is a Forgotten Gods feature. That is something we're working on specifically to include in the Forgotten Gods expansion as a sort of, well, A, selling point for it, and B, just something to round out kind of the end, or the last major sort of addition to Grim Dawn, most likely. Will there be new endgame mechanics in Forgotten Gods? Stay tuned. Oh, I suppose I should have our next item here. Getting distracted. So many questions. When will be the patch? In the next month or so. I think most likely in early May, maybe late April. We'll see if it squeezes in. Will you get crit bonus on Olran's raid? Nope, I don't think so. Can I give any more information of this shattering new game mode in Forgotten Gods? It's absolutely smashing. What's a synonym for shattering? What other quality of life features will there be in Forgotten Gods? There's some cool stuff coming. A lot of it is still a work in progress, which is why I'm not openly talking about it. Because personally, I don't like to discuss something we're doing unless it's set in stone and I know it's going to be in the game. I think those things will be in the game, but until they're ready and I can test them and see them for myself, I don't really want to bring them up. I can tell you that there's some really cool stuff, some stuff that people will really enjoy adding to their characters. Some new powers, if you will. Do we have any statistics on how people play the game? How many players solo, multiplayer, hardcore? Not like a full statistic rundown, but we have a pretty good idea of how many play multiplayer versus single player. It's about 10 to 12%, I would say, just off the top of my head. You understand that Forgotten Gods will require Ashes of Malmith. Will the content of Forgotten Gods be locked behind Ashes of Malmith content? It will not. So you will actually have the ability to go into the Forgotten Gods content as early as about level 15 to 20, depending on how quickly you get through the first chapter of Grim Dawn. You guys ever consider making an MMORPG, something like World of Cairn? That is a huge investment, both financially and time, and in a world where MMOs aren't as popular as they used to be, I'm not sure if that's necessarily a sound investment for a company of our size. Is it possible to change the normal and mythical version of a corresponding item set in a way that you can mix them to get at least the non-mythical set bonus? Nope, that is not working as intended, and well, because it's not in the game. Sorry, one more question. Is the new game mode going to be separate DLC like the Crucible, or would it be part of the Forgotten Gods DLC? It is a part of it. So we are bundling this new game mode with the Forgotten Gods story to give you one nice big expansion. So Ashes of Malmeth gave you 2 chapters of Grim Dawn's story. Forgotten God gives you 1 big chapter, and it also includes a game mode. Have you had any discussion on how the multiplayer aspect of the game can be improved? I mean, there's certainly room for improvements. I'm not sure how much we'll be doing to multiplayer specifically, because that is not necessarily the focus of Grim Dawn. So that's probably not the answer you were hoping for. Are there going to be items that have resist for pets or more damage, percent or flood damage? Well, I mean, you mean like just more pet items? I mean, that's, you basically described current pet items. There's just going to be more of them. So let's see, for this set, there's like a new effect I can show you. So you kind of saw the modifiers for it. So that's kind of the idea here of RF Censure, Sigil of Consumption for an Inquisitor Kabbalist combo. Though you can also get Necromancer in there. So, next set is called Rhyme Tongue. And this one is a bit unusual. We'll see how it plays out. It's kind of interesting, because it does things that most sets don't. It also applies to a skill that most of the endgame focus players don't necessarily use. But I think it'll actually be kind of interesting, because you can use it on bosses, at least some bosses, with this set. South of Devil's Crossing. No, we're not going south of Devil's Crossing. What about Grim Dawn Pen and Paper RPG or Dungeons and Dragons Supplement? That seems like something that could totally be done by the community, I think. Like something that just is shared openly. Didn't know there was a stream. Have you missed much? You missed a chunk. There's not gonna be any potholes in the story if you go in Forgotten Gods without having done Ashes of Malmeth. No, I don't think you'll need to know everything that happens in Ashes of Malmeth to understand what's happening in Forgotten Gods. There are certainly things that happen towards the latter half of the base game of Grim Dawn that you would probably want to know if you haven't already. Is the level cap going up? I'll tell you the level cap is very close to the current level cap. Is that a new white sword? No, that's the final tier of common quality gear. Please nerf ultimate, it's too hard for me. Well, what if we just buffed you? Like you specifically. Have we considered making a CRPG based on the Grim Dawn universe or a new one? That is actually something we've talked about, because doing something that's more story heavy and less on the loot fest would actually be kind of fun and interesting, but there'll be a lot of writing involved and a lot of quest work. So it is something that we're definitely keeping on the idea table for the future. We'll see what happens. Maybe that'll be our next big project. Any plans for more UI scaling options that are even possible, like having my inventory big but my HUD starts cluttering up the screen while playing? That would take some work, and anything that involves UI in the Grim Dawn engine is tricky. Will there be much new armor and weapons added? Yeah. Like, why even Grim Dawn if not new armor and weapons? Level 101 new cap confirmed. Yes. One more level in Forgotten Gods. If World War III starts soon, will Crate still be able to deliver in Forgotten Gods? I think so long as we don't get nuked, I think we'll keep working on it. Will the new mastery what? Pet that uses pet damage gear? What? Pet damage gear. You mean just like regular pet gear? Oh, next item. So this is part of why Blade Trap will actually work on a lot of bosses. Is this little proc here. Is Paramore levels finally being added to the game? We're thinking about it. April 1st was a very big day for us. I'm thinking it's gonna have to wait maybe till next April 1st. Can we make run speed easier to obtain, not using constellations? I mean, isn't using constellations the easiest way to obtain run speed? That's kind of the point. There's also some components you can use if you don't want to take particular constellations. You know, it'd be great, a real money auction house. Yeah, you're really on point here. That has definitely not backfired before in any other game. Plot twist, we decreased the level cap to 99. Did we fix percent trap resistance because it wasn't working when you modded it? I guess we did because it's working. When did you try it? I'll actually try it right now. Man, why is my favorite being so finicky? It's been fine before. Something else here to actually damage him. Come on, proc. There it is.
This is
Alright, Nemesis is actually too strong for that effect. Let's go over to a different boss. Report Zentai for cheating. Oh yeah, I cheat all the time. Don't you know? Okay, can't even see what's going on here. Okay, how about you? Now you just don't cover the screen with stuff. Oh, come on. Okay, well this is definitely working before. I'll have to check on it again. Whoop. Too much stuff. Oh god. What's up here? What did I miss? Helicon's now scale the player's feelings. That's from last year's, I think. Do I have a favorite constellation? I don't know. Depends on what we're talking about, like art or skill effect. I mean, Murmur was kind of a cool idea. What's another one? Amatak is cool because it just rains stuff. Anything on multiplayer experience being fixed? Lots of games lag because different regions of players live in. I mean, I can't help you there. It's all player to player. So if you're a host that's far away from the client, like you're going to lag. That's just the nature of it. Yeah, entrapment resistance too strong. I'll be taking a look at that later. Invalid skill profile and blade trap not triggering as it should. Would you consider releasing some big lore dev notes later on? I would like to know more about the stuff that seems inconsistent. Not sure what you mean. Big lore dev notes? I mean, we're not going to release our internal notes on like all the lore and story that you guys haven't seen yet. I'm not sure what you think is inconsistent. How is Cthulhu able to have children? Well, how are all the other gods in various mythologies have children? Usually involve parts of them. Great story PDF when? Good question. I'll remind Medea that it needs to come out. Will Forgotten Gods give us more inventory slash stash space? You have too many new characters so far. We'll probably add another stash page. If you really want infinite storage, then I suppose that's where the player-made utilities come in. How about old misadventures that gave background to Musalak and Fabius for the other nemesis? That would certainly be nice. I'd have to take the time to write them. Grimdom comic graphic novel would be awesome. It kind of would be, because someone would have to make it. Is Crate working on any other game than Grim Dawn? Yes, we are working on another project that will be announced pretty soon. Medea has actually already teased a little bit of it on the forums and for the holidays. Would I consider a lore questions stream one of these days? I feel like any stream with me is a potential lore questions stream. If you have a question, ask and see what I can tell you. Why is Grim Dawn more satisfying game than Diablo 3? That's up to you, I suppose. What do you find more satisfying about Grim Dawn than Diablo 3? If the new game mode is shattering, does that mean we'll be in a house of mirrors? No. We don't want to give you guys 7 years of bad luck. That's way too long. Maybe it was like 7 days of bad luck. You must put in the inventory an option to find very fast items, like put the name in a bar and voila, find it. An item search bar for the inventory? I mean, how many items are you storing in your inventory at any given time? More lore, less hell, heaven, and of course constellations. Maybe we only misunderstand. Maybe the new mode will be Shatnering and will involve William Shatner. Now you're getting onto something. Nemesis idea, shadow player character, the most formidable enemy on the inside is the one inside all of you. That would be pretty cool. The amount of tech involved to make that happen, though, I don't even want to think about it. Like we'd have to make an entity just like the player that has all the skills and only learns them when the player has them and then uses them properly on top of that. That would be the real trick, is teaching the AI to actually use the skills. Have you seen Ready Player One? How far away do you think we are from that kind of gaming lifestyle? I'm actually seeing Ready Player One tonight, so maybe I'll be able to answer that question for you after that. How far away do I think we are from that kind of gaming lifestyle? I don't know. I think it'll happen in our lifetimes. Technology is definitely getting there. Hopefully not in that sort of dystopian level, but hey. Hybrial's leaving us? Will you rework the UI regarding the craft window? What do you think needs reworking? Is it technically possible to add some sort of note writing functionality to your maps? Would be nice to mark down Nemesis sponsors, shows, etc. I mean, fundamentally, if we worked on it, yes. I don't think it would be trivial, as trivial as it sounds conceptually. We'd have to update the player save to store those any notes you leave and what they have. The system requirements of the game increase with Forgotten Gods. They will not. If you can run the game now, you'll be able to run it with Forgotten Gods. What happened to the mother and daughter traveling Astrakhan Road and had to eat people to stay alive? If you own Ashes of Malmith, you should maybe go back there and see. You just might meet some people. Can you give us any info on the pyramid in the background? Well, it's the end of the what do we call it? It leads to the end of the path of ascension, whatever that means. Search window and shop so we can search for keywords. That would be involved. Can we get more plant NPCs like Vinylton? I don't know, Vinylton is pretty unique. The crafting window needs to be a bit bigger. If you allow a lot of plants, the ones at the bottom get cut off. You have to close the trees above just to see them. If things are getting cut off at the bottom, that's a bug. Do you have your UI scaled in any way, by any chance? In terms of the UI being bigger, that's not something we can do to the resolutions the game supports. Is Riss still a lead programmer for Grim Dawn? He's not as involved in Grim Dawn. I mean, he is involved in Grim Dawn very much, since he's the one who's actually primarily working on porting it to the Xbox. He's not as intimately involved in the nitty-gritty quality of life stuff we're working on for the expansion. But yes, he would still be the lead programmer for Grim Dawn. No, we're not doing a Path of Ascension like Path of Exile. That's what the devotion screen is, essentially. How long am I spring for? I don't know, a bit longer. There's something else I want to show you guys, and something else we'll talk about. Lore question. How is humanity so technologically advanced when it's so pressed with monsters everywhere? How did it develop so much? In what way do you think humanity is technologically advanced? I think you might be confusing some things where like magic melds with technology, where certain things that would not be feasible necessarily are made possible by the use of arcane energies. And if you have a particular example of what you're thinking of, I guess. It's not that humanity is necessarily advanced while the monsters are everywhere. They advanced up until the Grim Dawn happened. Will we ever see the Emperor? That might be more of a Grim Dawn 2 question. If any time we'll give you guys more player customizations like hairstyle, body type, that's not very likely, especially not at this point. That's something that we really would have had to get in when the game was new. Player markers on the world map, similarly to how we don't have you able to jot down notes on the world map, that would be kind of the same issue. Yes, Riss was the one responsible for writing the DirectX 11 renderer. You would like more quests in the game. Well, good thing there's another expansion on the way. What's the main menu going to look like in Forgotten Gods? Please not another stone face. Ha! What, you don't like him? That reminds me, I completely forgot about my little buddy who's not hanging out with me right now. This whole stream, he's been missing and no one said anything. The Crucible thing, what was that all about? Balance changes in what way? So the Crucible is going to see some changes. I mean, this is something that applies to the game in general, which is that we're going to cap off how much you can stack defensive ability bonuses. Since that will impact players' survivability in the higher tiers of the Crucible, we're making some serious changes to some of the balance in the Crucible through things like reducing the intensity of fumble effects, the duration of crowd control effects applied by enemies, how many enemies spawn in the final waves, we're reducing the damage Nemesis bosses deal a little bit, and we're also going to make the blessings in the Crucible and the defenses you can build in the Crucible more impactful. So in terms of chronology of events for Grim Dawn, is it correct to say it went something like humans peek behind the veil, ethereals notice and teach humans how to sorcery, ethereals manage to cross the veil and turn some choice humans into puppets, trigger the Grim Dawn, oops, didn't mean to send desperate people into the blood cults of Cthulhu, crap, gotta have to deal with this before we can continue conquering the world. Kind of. I mean, humans already knew how to use magic before the ethereals taught them. What happened was that certain arcanists, who got a little too eager to, oops, wrong character, to tap into new sources of power, ended up tapping into the veil and piercing into the ether itself, where the ethereals were kind of like, oh, there's a way out. So they kind of prodded those arcanists along and taught them certain spells, up to the point where they could widen that breach enough that they could start passing through and start possessing people. At which point, yes, they became human puppets working for the ethereals. And then, slowly, behind the scenes, over a very long time, they prepared. They gathered more ethereals through the veil by trapping particular critical people up in the human hierarchy. They even went for the Emperor himself, as someone mentioned before, until they were ready for the glorious dawn to begin. And yes, that effectively did give the Cult of Cthulhu a greater hold on humanity, because people in desperation to survive did kind of flock over to the cult and bolster their numbers. Give Gazer a hat, ha! Can't wait for Grim Dawn 5000! There were trolls and Dermapterans and Grobbles even before the Grim Dawn happened. I think those would have been wiped out by humans that were so successful at the time before Grim Dawn. I mean, not necessarily. We're not talking about human population on the levels of modern day, where humans are basically filling up everywhere. There's plenty of places out in the world where humans don't necessarily live, or it's too inhospitable for them to live. Like, for example, why would they go to Eastmarsh when they've got a perfectly nice village nearby? How about polymorph or lycanthropy abilities? I'm afraid those will not happen. That will be quite a bit of work to make shape-shifting work, particularly when we're talking about mixing classes. If it wasn't a dual class system, it would actually be easier, so that we wouldn't have to worry about the interaction between, say, a shapeshifter class and Inquisitor or Soldier or whatever else. Can I maybe make them a bit cheaper for single-player Crucible than 2? I guess we'll think about that. Can you keep the current loading screen, please? Sort of. In the Forgotten Gods expansion, the loading screens will cycle randomly, so you will occasionally see lady loading screen. Will the patch be adding new factions? No, there'll be no new factions with this patch. Will there be a whirlwind skill? Maybe. We'll see. I'm feeling hopeful, but no promises yet. Any plans to rework bounties? A master bounty board where you can pick manage bounties for various factions of infinite bounties, or being able to discard bounties and select a different one. I would absolutely love to do that. It fell out of scope. It's probably not going to happen at this point. Is that a fancy arse top hat? Well, of course, sir. We gotta look fancy. We're walking around in Grim Dawn. Weren't the witch gods technically arcanists as well who managed to ascend? Good question. How many Cthulhu grips is Olgrim going to fall into in Forgotten Gods? All of them! Every single quest in Forgotten Gods is actually about how Olgrim fell into another rift. You look like I'm losing some hair or considered hair transplant? No. I'm okay with who I am. My hair keeps falling out. Eh. Can you explain once and for all why devs love ethereal factions so much? Because one of the main antagonists in the game? Will there be a new Zentai loading screen? Well, I'm flattered, but I don't think I'm very exactly the theme of Forgotten Gods. Besides, I'm not forgotten. Whoa. Why no teleporting skills? Well, the main thing about teleporting skills is that currently they allow you to cheat quite badly. Like, you can basically teleport over places you're not supposed to go. You can teleport over barriers that you're supposed to be able to destroy. It creates a lot of issues right now. The reason some enemies can do it is because they actually have a predetermined destination. So, for example, the Ethereal Nemesis teleports to you. He teleports to you and then he swaps with you. So he always has a predefined start and end point, whereas a player can click virtually anywhere. Was the War of the Gods in the time of the Arcovian era? Not exactly. Are there suitably pointy hats available for wizardy aligned players with a sense of fashion in the expansion? There was a good amount of pointy hats in the base game, and I think maybe... No, I guess there wasn't one in Ashes of Malmeth. But we'll see, we'll see. We're still working on the new item art, so there's room. There may be room for more pointy hats. Can you rent me for birthday parties? Am I really that entertaining? Like, what would I do? Stand on stage and talk about Grim Dawn? Any plans to expand on the Black Legion and Kaiman storylines? Well, I think the Black Legions has had their due of the base game and Ashes of Malmeth. But Kaiman's storyline, I think, has some room for growth. Turn down game sound music, please. Sure. It's already pretty low. The iconic theme music we hear in Ashes of Malmeth intro is only used in the Void's Edge boss fight. I think there's a few other bosses that use it. But yes, it was meant for Ekadzul. Can you get a combat log? Not very likely. The thing about Grim Dawn combat is that there's a whole lot of numbers at all times, and if you actually just get into like a pack of enemies and cast all your stuff and they hit you, the combat log is going to be like this long in 1 second. Any chance to not play the game 3 times and make the leveling style different? We'll see. As I mentioned earlier, we have some ideas to how to improve that. We're not sure yet if it will make it. We'll have to try it, see how it feels. And will you get another sweet infographic like you did for Ashes of Malmeth? Yes, that's very likely. Once we have the info to put in the infographic. Death Ring would be kind of the same issue. October's release for date for Forgotten Gods. There's no announced release date. Not yet. Alright. So the other big thing that's coming in patch V1.0.6.0, while I have a moment to breathe, is a new boss that we're adding in Ugdenbog. So I don't think I'm actually going to show you the boss today, but I'll give you a little teaser of what's to come. Will we see some polish to the base game, maybe new side quests? I mean, that's kind of what the expansion is for, is to add more content, so that's what we're focusing on. So we're not going to retroactively add more content to the base game. Any chance of adding theme songs to other bosses like Gargaball, etc.? Kind of underwhelming finding a powerful Gargantua with nothing but the regular theme in the background. That would be great. I think in a perfect world, every boss would have a cool theme, or at least share some themes. But that would take a lot more music recording, which of course we have to pay for, and as great as the sound guys over there are, they don't work for free. Release the Kraken! Yes, let's go release the Kraken. Can we get a potion that makes gear invisible? Man, why is my frame rate so dropping? You have to take a look at that. Anyways, a potion that makes gear invisible. I've discussed that before with people. Not sure how feasible it is. It might be possible. Yeah, I don't know why I'm getting these frame rate drops today. It's only when streaming. I'll have to take a look at my stream settings. I guess I'm putting too much into the the stream itself. Sorry about that. I'll try to fix it for next time. It's been a while. Is the game optimized for 4K? No, I wouldn't say it's optimized for 4K. 4K is still a very small subset of the player base, which kind of makes it difficult to justify. Not to mention that nobody here actually has a 4K monitor, so it's difficult to test. Do I have Windows Aero Mode enabled? Is Aero Mode even in? No, I guess it is in Windows 10, but I don't think that made a difference for me last time. I don't know, I'll look into it. Do I have the... Okay, I don't have the editor open. I have had the editor open before. So yes, this little bridge here that you guys might have seen in the... when running through Ugdenbog in the past, will now be available to you. And what's here, other than a bunch of slits? Ooh, that's gonna be something to read later. Any chance of making a potion of clarity persist to death? Nope. That is actually working great. So I'm not going to go further than this, but it does give you an idea of what's coming up. Good tease indeed. Those tentacles are thick. So, I should probably be getting back to work here in a pretty short while. So are there any more questions, or is there anything else you guys want to ask about the new patch? About Forgotten Gods? You want to see those new sets again really quick? Chili powder jar in my inventory? Oh, this one. That's one of the Kickstarter rewards. Actually, no, that one is from the Loyalist Edition. Show you those rings. No. Those rings are proprietary information. This character is totally legit, but definitely don't look at the rings. Will a new patch fix the map bug issue? If we're talking about those squares appearing, then no, not very likely. When is the Unicorn Mastery coming out? Maybe on the next April Fools. Does the attendant play a role in Forgotten Gods? I mean, he can't really leave where he is. I suppose if he could leave, he would. I didn't show the animate for the Radigan set. Alright. I thought I did. In terms of the lore, what will Forgotten Gods be offering? Will you get introduced to new gods? Will you learn more about the primordials and Cthulhu's fall and children? I mean, it'll certainly offer you a lot more lore. The Forgotten Gods will answer some burning questions that have been asked regarding past stories threads that we started. If you're into the Kaiman's Chosen and the Order of Death's Vigil stories, you'll see that progress a little bit in some interesting ways. The Witch Gods will play a part. And of course there's the Forgotten Gods. Has Grim Dawn met or exceeded expectations when you all first came up with the idea for the game? I mean, ultimately, it's a question for Madeira since he's the one who originally came up with everything, but I dare say I think it's exceeded expectations. I mean, once we told ourselves that like 250,000 copies sold would be enough. But since then, the game has gotten way bigger. It was originally supposed to be probably a quarter of how big it is now. And so, I mean, as the game got bigger, we added more features, we added more masteries. The devotion system was something that wasn't even on the table when the game was first concepted. So yes, the game has far exceeded expectations. Any possibility of making the movement completely directional as opposed to click-based as it is now? No, we're not going to change the way movement or any sort of core mechanics work. Any chance in the future of a pure chaos damage class? No. Why are all my best ideas kept only as April Fool's jokes? Well, I suppose if there are really good ideas in it, you'll have to tell me. DirectX 12 support is not very likely. It doesn't really have that huge of an improvement generally. Not as much as DirectX 11 did. But DirectX 11 was why, or came about because we were working on the Xbox version. So we need to get the game up to DirectX 11, not 12. Is the Forgotten God Steve? No one even remembers Steve. Will the whole add-on play in a desert area? No. Desert is certainly going to play a part. I personally hate really long, drawn-out desert environments with nothing in them. So we are making sure that that is not the case with Forgotten Gods, and you will actually see quite a bit of variety in terms of what's in store for you. But check back on Monday for some first looks at some of the areas of Forgotten Gods. Any more stash space? As I mentioned, we might add another tab. If you're interested in infinite stash space, there are utilities made by players that are pretty great. Can you tell us more about the Shrine of the Forgotten God in Blood Grove? Yeah, it might be related somehow, being a Forgotten God shrine and all. Is the AOM loading screen woman the soothsayer Madame Jaroth? No. Will the attack damage scaling also apply to skeletons, or only Hellhound Blind Feed kind of pets? Well, skeletons don't have the kind of ability unlocks that those other pets do. But their other basic abilities that they cast will have that feature, yes. Is Rook really dead? Yes. There's a gravestone right next to Devil's Crossing for him. Oh, right, I was supposed to show the necklace that someone missed. How much time to design a new monster? The design is actually especially the least involved part of that, since the bulk of it comes in animation and art. We were just talking about a basic monster. I mean, I can come up with a skill set pretty quickly and then prototype it, get into the game, and then make final skill effects for it, probably within a day or less. I mean, I can get several monsters in a day once I've plotted them all out. In terms of getting the art in, I mean, that takes longer depending on how involved the monster is. If we're talking like a completely new monster, new art, new animations, we're talking about weeks. If we're talking about just a monster that uses an animation set that already exists, or one that's not going to require many changes to the model, that could happen in a day, that could happen in a few days if it's a little more involved. Will there be anything new for Defiler, like a new set? Yes, there will be more sets in Forgotten Gods. Whoever does your loading screen art, pretty good art. Way better than I could ever do. Way better than I could ever do, too. Will we ever see dragons? You want an add-on which is called Grim Dawn, Rise of the Dragons. Not allowed to do dragons. It is the decree from on high up that dragons do not exist in Grim Dawn. And that makes sense. I mean, as much as I like dragons, I don't think they fit in Grim Dawn necessarily. Grim Dawn is a different kind of fantasy. It doesn't have the whole elves, dwarves, dragons stuff. We draw upon a lot of different mythologies, but not necessarily the classic fantasy tropes. The new content will not be southeast of Devil's Crossing. Can you get more Gazer set items? Gazer Man is one of a kind. You don't just toss another Gazer Man out there. What kind of game universe would you like to play around with at any point in the future, if when you try something other than Grim Dawn? That's a tough question. I'm not really sure. I mean, there's a whole universe that I've worked on for my own like sort of writing on the side and that I've used for my D&D campaign with my friends. But I'm not sure necessarily. Well, I could potentially be put into a game setting, I suppose. It would be more of a CRPG, I guess. Who made Benjar? Can you please buff him for once? Benjar did get a buff, or was getting a buff a little bit. Will Forgotten Gods be the last expansion of Grim Dawn? I'm not gonna say never, but Forgotten Gods would have to sell very well, given the age of the game, to justify a third expansion. Realistically. Given how long Grim Dawn's been around already, with each expansion, essentially, there's a decay of how many people are going to be interested in it. So doing a third or fourth expansion starts getting pretty risky financially. Who was the original owner of the soiled trousers? He would like to remain anonymous, and we will respect his wishes. Will there be a continuation of the secret quest of D&I in FG? Might be create office as a secret level at the end? I've got some ideas. I don't think you'll leave disappointed if we have time to do it. More destructible environments. We kind of leaned away from that as we worked on Grim Dawn. Originally, we wanted to do a lot of that, but it was actually kind of messy, and it wasn't as impactful as we would have liked, so we kind of toned that back. There's still a little bit of it, but perhaps not as much as you're looking for. How do we collaborate? Like, what tools do we use, or do we just use Skype, etc.? We actually have a Crate Discord. You're obviously not getting invited to it. That we use to share, screen captures, to talk, to get on voice chats. We used to use a program called QQ by Tencent, but it has recently turned into a piece of shit, and so we don't use it anymore. Crocodile Man. We're not adding Crocodile Man. Gazer Woman? Maybe. You may be onto something there. Do I call Lovecraft not classic fantasy? No, I don't. I guess I would not. I would not consider Lovecraft classic fantasy. Classic fantasy, as I mentioned, I would consider things like elves, dwarves, dragons, fairies, that sort of like level of fantasy. Lovecraft is more recent development. Lord of the Rings touches more on classic fantasy. Augments for metals. We'll see about that. I think you'll be very excited for the augments on metals. Will we see the next chapter of Dravis' search in Forgotten Gods? I have a feeling that Dravis' search is over. Are we playing a Shapeshifter Mastery? We're not doing shapeshifting, as I mentioned earlier today. TQ did one 10 years later. TQ is owned by a different company, and that was their prerogative because they seem to be trying to get a return on their investment, since they ended up buying the rights to TQ from THQ, which was closing. And so I guess to recoup their costs, they decided to re-release an anniversary edition, to patch it, and then they outsourced an expansion. How that did, I don't know. What is the Discord link? No! Will this new game be an action RPG too? The other game we're working on is not an action RPG. Can we see the amulet? What, this amulet again? Will leveling new characters be a bit faster? I mean, Ashes of Malmouth has already added a pretty effective way to level your characters through the experience potion you can get from the Malmouth faction. Does Madeira still have the Warden? I sure hope so. I'd be pretty disappointed if he did not. Could I scroll over the Blood Knight pieces one more time, please? Sure. My favorite movie, PC game, and music band of all time. Going in reverse. Queen. I'd have to say for video game. I mean, you're making me pick one video game. There's a lot of video games that I've thoroughly enjoyed over the years. I think one that really made an impact on me when I was a kid would probably been Warcraft 3 because of modding. That really got me into modding, which kind of got me to this career. And then Morrowind, Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Those are two games that I guess really shaped things in my childhood. And favorite movie? I mean, Star Wars. I guess Empire Strikes Back. The whole original trilogy, really. Next piece. What's the deal with the tiny area behind a breakable wall north of Broken Hill's portal? Seems like there should be something there. There might have just been a broken wall that we misplaced. Something, Draven, old gods confirmed. Not quite. Speaking of leaning back from things, you were checking the Kickstarter trailer a while back, and you were wondering when we decided to back off from the whole open world thing. Around Act 2, actually. So back when we added the whole old Arkovia area, the initial version of it was way more open-ended and way more like wide-spanning. And honestly, the feedback was kind of negative. People were getting lost. They didn't really know where to go next. They ended up getting turned around. And that's kind of when we came to the conclusion that action RPGs aren't necessarily the best fit for an open world setting. And so we kind of reeled that in a bit. You can still explore along the, like there's areas that are optional when you go out around Grim Dawn's world, but it's not as open-ended as it used to be. Tag not found in Blood Knight Amulet is not a new master. You knew I was a man of custom taste, well, I appreciate that. When's the release date again? Next patch is coming next month. Expansion is coming in the second half of 2018. Am I excited about Blizzard updating Warcraft 3? I would be more excited if they did it in HD. Like if they took those Heroes of the Storm models they have and made Warcraft 3 like that again, I would be so pumped. Like I wasn't pumped for StarCraft Remastered because I think StarCraft 2 is more fun. I know some people will skewer me for that. But Warcraft 3, I would buy an HD version. I'm saying it on record on the stream. If Blizzard's listening, I would totally pay for that. Have you? Yeah, you heard you were thinking about how the street difficulties work. Yes, that is something we're thinking about. We'll see how it goes. Where can you get this armor? This armor is coming in the next patch, and it will be part of the loot table. Will there be tire tracks showing where to go in Forgotten Gods? Probably not. The art overhaul of Arkovia, that happened much later in development, but yes, I agree that those new assets for the Arkovian Empire were really cool. And the Hyboreal, who's no longer in the chat, did a great job retrofitting all those dungeons I made forever ago. What is my favorite damage type of the current gear options? I mean, my favorite damage type is always cold, even though people complain that cold is not always top tier for all builds. But I enjoy it. I always enjoy cold damage in games, and that is usually what I go for if I can. Grim Dawn RTS when? You know what? I would love to do a Grim Dawn RTS. I don't know when and if it will happen, but it'll be fun, at least to me. Maybe we'll sell 5 copies, but at least I'll be happy, and then the company will be broke. But are the mods for GD on Steam? If you're talking about Steam Workshop, not at this time. Maybe in the future. You got a Trozen Spellbreaker? Well, if you're a Trozen Spellbreaker, you will be happy with a little buff coming up in the next patch. Is there going to be music inside dungeons? Well, there's going to be new music for sure. Will Forgotten Gods have magic lamps or genies? No, it will not. We're not doing djinns. How am I planning to balance the Gazer meta? I think the Gazer meta is kind of self-balancing. It's just the beauty of Gazer Man and how intricate his stats are and what impact he has on the game as a whole. It is really kind of like the pinnacle of Grim Dawn when you think about it. Any chance of a brawler class like monk, martial artist, fighter? I don't think something that doesn't use weapons would be a very good fit in Grim Dawn, especially with the multi-class system. Wololo! Classic Age of Empires priests. Can you confirm Quicksand and Forgotten Gods yet? Not yet, not yet. Keeping in mind, when are wands coming to Grim Dawn? I mean, you effectively have wands in the form of scepters. If you're talking about a range thing, that's not something we're going to do. If you want to donate money to Crate, the best that you can do is buy more copies of the game. You can give them to your friends, spread the word. Really, the more people know about Grim Dawn, the better we do. I mentioned that Forgotten Gods was originally going to be named Eldritch Moon. Do you play some Magic the Gathering in your spare time? I used to play Magic the Gathering in my spare time. I was a pretty avid Magic the Gathering player for many years back in the day. I kind of burnt out on it. I have awful luck with draws, and I kind of often end up just getting mana screwed, and so I kind of don't play as much as I used to. But yeah, with the whole Eldritch Moon thing, it was really more just a Google search. It's like, oh great, that's a thing. Well, I guess we're not going with that. Any idea how many new tracks will be in Forgotten Gods? Not on top of my head. It might be a little less than Ashes of Malmeth since there's less actual world in the story mode. Are there going to be any new weapon types in Forgotten Gods like staves, bows, etc.? Nope. We are not adding new weapon types. We want to focus on the ones we've got. There's already a lot of them. What's the current AM pickup rate? About 24%, I believe. Maybe a little higher. I haven't looked at the numbers in a while. Do I agree that Grim Dawn is still lacking cold skill spell support? I don't know if it's lacking it. I think there's room for improving certain synergies, but I don't think it's necessarily lacking it. I mean, there's 3 classes that support cold damage. Will we see more rogue dungeons, maybe longer than Ancient Grove? As has been answered earlier, we're not, at least initially, adding another roguelike dungeon in Forgotten Gods. Reason for that is that the new Shattering Game Mode kind of fills a similar role. When will you hear news on the new game mode? Stay tuned. Maybe in the next few Grim Misadventures. We'll see. We'll see when it's all ready. That's the key. It has to be ready to show you. It's playable, but it's not ready. Wielding shields in both hands is not happening. What are my thoughts on Grimdale doing a crossover with Dengen Run... What? Dengen Ranpa? I don't even know what that is. Any more info on what will be in the expansion? I mean, I covered a lot of that, or a bunch of that, in the stream earlier today, so it might be something you might want to rewatch if you just came in. But other than that, stay tuned for our future development updates. We will be revealing more and more of Forgotten Gods as we get closer to its release. Alright, any last minute questions? Oh, I do anime. I'm not familiar with all anime. I was actually finally watching all of Ghost in the Shell just last week. I didn't get through it all yet. Because I've seen like episodes over the years, but never like the whole thing in sequence. So I finally started watching it all at once. Can you get a set to make someone familiar invincible, but not being able to attack and just buff heal? Interesting. That would be quite a change to it. Zentai didn't accept my Steam friendship. Makes you sad. I'm sorry. As a simple rule, I just don't accept random friend requests, even though you guys are all great. That is still my personal Steam account, and so I keep it pretty organized. Will you ever see Grava streaming in a dress? I sure hope so, but probably not. Is it possible to bring some server, quote unquote, for stable online matches? Grim Dawn is going to stay person to person. That's not going to change. We're not going to do any sort of dedicated servers. That's just not our goal. Can I tell you a funny story that happened during development that I didn't share yet? I don't remember what I've shared and what I haven't. Yes, by Ghost in the Shell, I mean standalone complex. A funny story that I haven't shared. What? How about the depressing time, how many times doors have broken? You'd think doors would be easy, but they're like the most complicated thing in game development, apparently. But we fixed yet another thing with doors for next patch. Maybe this time. Something insanity. Can you add weapon damage to Firestrike Brimstone and make it work on melee? I mean, Brimstone does add its damage to melee attacks. It just doesn't do the spread. And no, adding weapon damage to that would be pretty crazy. I have seen One Punch Man. It was pretty fun. Will we see a Grim Dawn 2? We shall see. That would be far off in the future. Any improvements to the class devotion system at all? What improvements are you looking for? The one where we got drunk and things changed? I can't think of a story like that. Alright guys, so before I cut you off and get back to actual work, I do actually have one more thing to talk about with you. Is that with the upcoming patches, we are making some significant changes to the Crucible. We're actually going to do some invites to the closed testing group, which means you could become one of the Praetorians, the people who get to test our content before it hits the wider world, which will include the Forgotten Gods expansion. So, if you are a Crucible player that enjoys playing at the high-end levels, and you would like to contribute to the testing and release of future content in Grim Dawn, please send a PM to Zentai on the forums, talking about your experience with the Crucible, and sort of what are you looking for in the Crucible, and why you think you'd be a good pick to be a playtester. And we'll get back to you, potentially. Depending on how many people reply, I might not be able to respond to every person PMing me. And I will mention that a key thing when we recruit people for playtesters is that we look for people that are a positive contribution to the community. So if you've been on the forum a long time and you've generally tried to be a positive influence, then you have a pretty good chance. Could I post this info on the forum? Yes, I will post in the dev stream thread what info I'm looking for from you, and if you're interested in joining the playtester group, this will be an opportunity. Can playtesting be streamed? Generally, no. Only with our explicit permission. There are some rules involving playtesting, which if you break, you will no longer be a playtester. Thankfully, all of our playtesters so far have respected them, and I hope anyone that joins us will too. Yes, well, your world is on fire because you get to playtest the Crucible. Will Crucible be part of Forgotten Gods? Well, I mean, they'll still be there. It's not going away. Any plans to add a search function in Devotion? We'll see. We'll see if it's feasible. Why Crucible in particular? Because the next patch does have some pretty big changes to the Crucible, and we just want to open it up to more input. Alright guys, thanks for stopping by the stream. Hope you enjoyed this huge teaser. I don't know, depends on perspective of the next patch and Forgotten Gods. I'll be sure to be streaming again in the future. I'll probably have some exciting new things for you again. Grava will be streaming again as well. Don't worry, he's not leaving. And we'll see you guys next time and see you around the forum. Take care.